I didn't mean that, but I wish I did. I'm so punny.
I need my hat on.
What's it say?
That feels much. American handmade guitars, Martin, Nazareth, Pennsylvania.
What good can come
Come
from
from
Nazareth?
just gonna come from Martin.
That's cool. Anyway, welcome everybody. I guess I'm back. I wasn't supposed to be, but I'm here. Instead of Jared hosting, we have him doing the other job that I typically do during this. Everybody give him a hand. Woo!
Hey, Jared. You missed us too much? Is that why you're back early, Jake?
No. My wife got freaked out and said, "You need to take me home now."
Oh, well, you're a good husband.
Yeah. Anyway. Welcome to Becoming That One House podcast. This week we have a breakdown of a message that I was not here for. It's called the Serpent. Genesis 3, 1 through 8, or is it 1 through 7? I think it's 1 through 7.
7.
Look at you, look at you. I am, of course, Jake, your host. This here is our student ministry director, Josh, and our Capitan, Benjamin. I can't believe I just said that. Did that really come out of my mouth?
Rolled right off the tongue.
I don't like that. Forgot where I was. This is a very special episode. So because I wasn't here on Sunday, we have an entire outline curated by audience questions.
Yes.
A couple of them are from, I think, your message a couple weeks ago, Josh, and a couple of them are just random ones. And then primarily, I know we say we usually keep this anonymous, but I'm not gonna because I'm gonna celebrate it. Neil Moore,
rule.
You saw him on the podcast last week. He actually, I asked him since I wasn't gonna be here to come up with the questions, and from what I see on this page, he did a great job of it. So we'll get a little bit of his flavor later. Otherwise, let's start with our icebreaker. And this was also created by Neil.
Oh.
So the Bible never tells us what the fruit is that Eve ate. It is just called fruit. We often attribute the apple. Describe the physical and flavor attributes of what you think the fruit would have looked and tasted like.
Really good. Really, really, really good. Because only the best in the garden. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil wouldn't have been any different. The apple thing, from my understanding, it's a mistranslation of a pun when the Bible is translated into Latin. So that's why modern day we think of apple or just assume apple. There is a tradition behind that, but it's based on a mistranslation of a pun and Bible into Latin. So there's no actual biblical evidence that it was an apple.
Do you know what the pun was?
No, I don't have it in front of me. It was probably pretty punny, but
that's like the fourth time he said that since we've been down here.
Not the first time that
ago.
They're going to hear, so,
maybe.
If you edit well.
You did hit the record button early, I think. So.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. Eventually, this will work its way into outtakes.
I think it would have looked and tasted amazing.
I have no idea.
Yeah, the only kind of...
It doesn't say, but probably just a beautiful, nice, robust Honeycrisp.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think of, and it was kind of a joke answer, was do y'all know what the fruit durian is?
Mm-mm.
So it's a fruit in, I believe, China. No, Taiwan. It's a very voluptuous, looking fruit. It's very red, and you cut it open, and it's all pretty, and is white with it kind of looks like Oreo ice cream in fruit form. But when you taste it,
did you say Oreo ice cream in fruit form?
Yes.
There's a visual.
Yeah.
It's very trash tasting.
Oh.
It's a delicacy, and people over there love it. However, it tastes and smells like trash.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that might just be my American brain going there, but
We don't know, but I have every reason to believe it was excellent. It was the best.
Yeah. All right.
It was better than all the rest. Better than any fruit I've ever met.
All right. Cut the podcast. That's all we need right there. Done. Anyway. So we're going to get to the first of the audience questions. Oh, by the way, if you want to submit audience questions, please check out our contact or our connect card. They're in all the pews. Have we scattered them throughout the church yet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They're scattered throughout the church now. If you look hard enough, you might find Josh laying in a bed of them somewhere.
Wow.
It's possible.
This is completely anonymous, except for, of course, the questions that Neil came up with. It is completely anonymous.
They're anonymous until they're not.
Well, until I decide they're not.
Yep. That's about right.
Anyway, put a question on here. You can also connect with one of these two. I mean, I guess you could kind of connect with me on here, but I don't know why you would. Anyway, you can connect with one of these two. Put your name and info. There's a couple of different options. All that good stuff. And other than that, our first audience question is the fireside open for checking out books? The simple answer to this is yes. It's not a very strict library setup, as I am aware, unless something has changed in recent weeks. But there is a binder on the shelf. It is in the very back behind them. It's labeled with Fireside Book Checkout. You just open that up. I believe it has a form that you write your name, the book that you took, and the date that you took it. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's how we check out books. Mm-hmm. We will try to do a better job of curating what's on there to be maybe a little bit more pointed to what we're focusing on currently, or just more current material for the congregation. Other than that, yeah, it's open for book rentals. Obviously, these two are very well read, so even if you just want book recommendations, you can go right to them. They'll know where to point you.
Yes.
And then so with that, we're going to get in the second audience question. What is the importance of fasting? When should we do it? And how do you fast safely?
Good. This is the second time this question has come up in several months, which is good. I think that there's interest, and thank you so much for the question. So I'm going to go where I went last time. Fasting is to abstain mostly from food. Doesn't have to be, but that's the original intention. It's a religious exercise. It's not done, or at least shouldn't be done, to impress God or to make God love you more. It's not done primarily to lose weight. Those are secondary benefits. I've said last time that I wish some of those secondary benefits would actually work for me, but those are secondary regardless of the outcome. The goal is to help us grow deeper with Jesus, to grow our dependence on Jesus. I think it exposes our weaknesses and how vulnerable we really are and how dependent on God we really are. It exposes the idols of our heart, just our tendency to take good things and turn them into ultimate things. And it's saying, while you're fasting and abstaining from food or something else, Jesus, I want you to fill that space. It's meant to increase our gratitude and the blessings that we do have. It's meant to fuel our longing in a broken world, to highlight that we do live in a broken world and God is the only one that can fill that longing. The Old Testament, there were a couple of places and instances that it was required to fast, but most of the time you see the characters of Scripture doing it voluntarily. You get to the New Testament in Matthew 9. John the Baptist's disciples are basically questioning Jesus. Why do the Pharisees and why do we fast, but your disciples aren't? Jesus is very specific about he's on earth and there's a time that he won't be, which they don't fully understand, but then they will fast, they will grieve, but him being on earth was not the time for them to do that. See what else I want to say about it. I'll get to the safety thing in just a second. There's the thing I said last time. I like the quote. It was that lament and fasting is the minor chord in our faith, and joy is our major key. And so lament and fasting is a necessary thing, I think, because not necessarily like we have to do it, but in general, it's a cry of our hearts in a broken world. But the major key is joy because of who Jesus is and what he's done and what he will do. How to do it safely is a good question. I think it depends on the person. I don't think it has to be food, but if it's going to be food, I think you obviously have to be aware of your tolerances and intolerances, just your physiological makeup. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist, but I do think you'd want to be very careful about that. Maybe for you, if you have some real sensitivities, you have to be on a certain eating schedule or whatever, I would just be careful. But when I think of safely, I just think of finding what you can do safely and just trying it, and maybe starting small and just using that space, whether it's food or something else, and devote it to, in a short amount of time, devote it to prayer, and just see what God does in that space, because I think God can do some awesome things. You don't have to fast. Jesus kind of does assume it for the first century context. I would say that it's not mandatory for us, but he does say if and when you do it, make sure that you don't let people know that you're doing it, because otherwise that takes a vertical exercise and turns it into a horizontal. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be seen by people. So that's what I want to say about that right now. We could say more, but thank you for your question. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it very well. Just to summarize everything you just said, it's really about growing closer with Christ, praying, reading your word, using that time that you would normally use, and then when those urges come of hunger and things like that, you can use that as reminders of how we are just the flesh, and we rely so much on God, and then we can use that time to reflect on Him. I know that people use it in seasons of life, whether that be just maybe a dry season in life, or maybe a season where there's some big things coming up that you need some discernment with,
yes.
and you use it in those areas, which I think is very impactful. And also, in addition to the safety piece, I would say start simple.
Yeah.
Start with a 5-hour fast or a 12-hour fast or something, and then if you feel led, you can increase yourself from there and see how you do and that kind of thing. But just remember what you're doing it for and who you're doing it for.
Yep. That's good. It is about being with Jesus, so think of it relationally. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Not doing something for Jesus, for His approval.
Exactly.
But from this aspect of I want to just increase my relationship with Him, intimacy.
All right. Moving on to some more audience questions here. We got a couple more. I believe these two are related to your most recent message.
All right.
The first one is animals were created first, then man named them, then woman was created. Is this where reproduction was created? So animals were only male before that.
Yep. So I think if we look at Genesis 1:20, which I think is going to help us in this context, I'll read it real quick and then talk about it here. It says, "And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living things, let the birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, and with the water swarm according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and He blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there's evening and morning on the fifth day." So we do see early on in creation of animals that it does appear that there are both sexes present. It's male and female animals, and when God says be fruitful and multiply, there's an implication there that there's both there. And so He's calling His creation into being fruitful and multiplying. So I think you see both male and female animals from the beginning.
Would you say that it's the man that He purposely leaves without a partner for a short amount of time on purpose?
Yeah, it's possible.
He doesn't do that with the animals necessarily, but He does it just so that man, being made in His image, will feel that effect of there's something missing here, and then God fills it.
Yeah, it's almost like God shows him the need almost before it's met by God.
Yep.
I've heard it said before that when Adam is maybe naming the animals, and of course this is speculation at this point, in my opinion, but as he's naming the animals, maybe he sees that there's these pairs, there's a male made for a female and that kind of thing, and then he comes to a point where he's saying, "Oh, where's mine? Where's my partner?" and that kind of thing, and that can lead into man is not good to be alone, and he's not finding a helper suitable for him. So
Can you imagine looking at something like that and just not having like a context for what it is? Like, why is this different?
Yeah, you wouldn't even know how to articulate maybe
Right.
what you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So much we don't know.
It makes you wonder also if he felt the need to articulate it or if it was just something that was just kind of like, okay.
Sure.
It's a good question.
Let's see. Okay. How does this relationship between man and woman apply outside of marriage? What do we learn about God's intention for the world from this? Why did God make a garden for us, and how does the New Testament use Genesis 2 to instruct us about God's design and command?
30 seconds. So we're going to try and cover that. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
So, Ben, you can help me through this as we
You
go.
start, I'll jump in.
Yep. But so I broke it down in these individual questions. So how does the relationship between man and woman apply outside of marriage? Well, good question. Most of what we see and what we were studying at the time was within the context of marriage. We see that continued all throughout the New Testament in Ephesians and Colossians and all that kind of thing. But marriage here in Genesis was the primary imagery that we saw between the male and female context. I'd love to ask some follow-up questions to this, but I guess just some main points that come to mind is, one, if it's not within the context of marriage and it's just other people around us, there's obviously just that brotherly, sisterly love, oneness in Christ, and walking along the way with brothers and sisters in Christ. I think if you hear in Ephesians and Colossians and 1 Peter, like that submissiveness language that comes in when it comes with like a wife's role, that doesn't play into like every day. So like there's no submission to all men, there's submission to husband, that type of thing. And then man's protection and provision and all that applies to family and wife and that kind of thing. And it's different than context outside of that in a lot of ways. So I think it also speaks into some contexts of how, we talk often about like, living together outside marriage, sex outside of marriage, sexual activity outside of marriage, all of those things are not going to be within the context of man-woman relationship. Those are going to be separate and hopefully abstained from outside of the marriage. So there is some things here that we can pull from New Testament teachings into what Genesis says, obviously. But I would say that would probably summarize that the best. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, that was very concise. Well done. I mean, we could go, like you said, we could go really deep with this.
Yeah.
So again, I want to kind of reset with what we're doing in this series. We're trying to read in context, and just stay there. And then, of course, this question is good. We can take New Testament and we can read back into it based on what Jesus says, how it's fulfilled. I don't know the answer to how far to go with, we only get a very short 2 chapters, and then we move into sin. And so once sin happens, then things kind of change. So God's original intent, his intention for the world, it really seems like in Genesis 1 and 2, his intention was for man and woman to come together from their family, separate from their family, and form a new family unit. And that was going to be the way that they were going to reproduce, and the story that they were going to tell as they subdued and ruled and cultivated and all the things that they did and related with God and each other. There doesn't seem to be any room for people that weren't going to be married. But again, we don't have much information because as soon as we get into the story, sin happens, right? So it doesn't last very long. So now reading back from the New Testament, Jesus and Paul put an incredible value on singleness, but we would just have to admit that that's probably reading back into the story.
Sure.
Which is good. I've told you before. I do that. I even teach that, and there's a certain method of doing that. I think we're trying to do, at least first and foremost, something a little bit different. So his original intent, I think, was to use the relationship of marriage as the foundation of forming families and having children, and of course, I would think there would have been time periods where obviously the kids would have been single for a while, right? A 5-year-old, a 12-year-old. I don't know. There's so much conjecture, right?
Yep.
So I want to say that first. New Testament, I think you get it's post sin, right? Genesis 3 on. But you get Jesus showing up, and you get in some places like Jesus and Paul talk about the advantages of being single. So this is clearly today. It is not a disadvantage. There is not a wow, you are disadvantaged because you're single. It can feel that way. you know what else can feel disadvantaged? Being in a really broken, loveless marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That can feel also terrible,
Yep.
and so we're talking about the effects of sin, and how that kind of syncs up. But there's a huge place for singleness. We need to come alongside our singles and put a higher value on whether that they believe that to be a calling or not, short term, long term, or just something that aches their heart, and yet they're staying single because that's what they believe is their calling and God's will in that stage of life.
And a single would fall into the question of the relationship between man and woman outside of marriage. I mean, they're even speaking into that relationship as it is. So I think it's good.
Yep.
I'm gonna take this. What do we learn about God's intention
Yes.
for the world from this? And
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that down into the final question because I think it kind of pairs well with how God speaks from the New Testament, Genesis 2. Why did God make a garden from us? I just think He was taking the world He created and everything around and creating a home for His creation. I just think it's world and then it's home. He's creating a place to dwell with them, to be with them, to enjoy that word Eden, obviously
pleasure,
meaning pleasure and beauty, and so He's just giving them a home to live in, to dwell with God. And so I think that's
I think it was
a
little literal garden. I like the garden imagery a lot because I think you can take a garden, you can cultivate it, you can reproduce it,
and everything in a garden is alive. There's nothing.
Well said.
There's nothing dead.
Yep,
Well,
that's good.
Now there is, but I can't imagine there was. If a garden is functioning correctly, there is nothing dead.
Now, the arc of the Scripture's story is that a garden eventually, in the end of Revelation, turns into a city. So there's some sort of movement there. Now, I know this is for all you Hallmark movie lovers. This goes against the grain because what the Hallmark movies try to reinforce is get away from the city because the city is bad.
Right.
Every single
Get to the
one of
country.
But
City boyfriend bad, country boyfriend good.
But anyway, I digress. There is a movement, though, of, I'm not saying that everywhere we live on the new earth is going to be this like massive city kind of feel, complex, whatever. I think there's, again, tons of room for conjecture there. I just think it's interesting how, so again, we're speculating, but was that garden theme, was Eden meant to be taken and reproduced outside of the garden? Was man and woman tasked to do that, where it was kind of formless? So God did this like macro order from chaos, and yet in the small in the spaces in the world there were still areas of formlessness and tohu vavohu. Yes, I brought it back. Yes,
there it is.
And I smiled when you said it.
I could make an argument, right? That's
and I love the imagery of what you were just explaining in the home of like God is creating a home for His creation to dwell in, but then even outside, like post sin, like the garden can almost be like your home, right? Like the man and woman is created, and then they're cultivating. It's hopefully alive. You're hopefully subduing it, and you're protecting it, and you're doing all those things. And so I think there's some home imagery there too, not with the family unit, even in the context of marriage coming out of that. I think so.
Revelation 21. A garden doesn't come down from heaven to inhabit earth. It's a city, And so again, they're images. Do I think it's literal? I'm leaning that way, yeah. But I'm not saying we're not going to have gardens and we're not going to all live. I'm not saying we're not. I'm not saying we're all going to live in an urban, like concrete jungle kind of like context. We don't want to stretch this too far.
Yeah.
There's just something neat about like even in the midst of sin, things are. We're cultivating, we are subduing the earth, and we're still sinners, so we're not doing it perfectly. But we are filling the earth. Are there 8 to 9 billion people now? I think that's one mandate that my former professor is like, we kind of nailed that one. We got to get a lot of them wrong. But now some people are like, nah, well, I don't want to have kids. And then it's like, and then they're like, well, I think the mandate ended because the earth's too populated. And then it's like, does the Bible really say that? I would lean toward no, the Bible doesn't say that. We need to stop having children, even though I don't have children. So that's another conversation, another podcast. We've tried, but
there's also a difference between not by choice and by choice not having. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so then I would say that the question of how do we learn about God's intention for the world from this? So we see God's intention from the very beginning, obviously, man, woman, garden, relationship with Christ or with God, that type of thing from the beginning, and then we have to look at it post sin. Now, when we start looking at the New Testament, like what's the intention? So I just basically went through in the last question, how does the New Testament use Genesis to instruct us? I picked 4 places that it's referenced in the New Testament. So starting in Matthew 19, it talks about divorce, and Jesus is being asked about divorce from the religious leaders. He uses that in the words of saying, what God has joined together, let man not separate, where he's talking in Genesis 2 there. Excuse me. 1 Corinthians 6, talking about, or directly speaking, I think about sex outside of marriage. It's talking about the sex with a prostitute violates the body and the oneness and the one flesh. And so I think you could take that even just as any sexual activity outside of your marriage is frowned upon because of the oneness that comes with that gift that's given in marriage. You see it in 1 Corinthians 11 when he starts talking about male headship and that type of thing, and you see the created order he references back to. And then you see it in some places like 1 Timothy when it even comes to like roles within the church and things like that of how things are created. We're referencing back to Genesis there. So he's creating. He has an intention from the beginning, and then post, and he has his intentions for the way that the world is ordered through the basis of creation in many spots within the New Testament.
We can't keep going much further because it would be its own podcast.
Yes.
But we would have to say from the New Testament that the roles that God has ordained for man and woman are not all a result of the fall.
Correct.
There is a biblical pre-Genesis 3.
Yes.
You know, it's not a result of the fall that my wife submits to me. Yes, I also submit to her, but biblical headship, as again, is different podcasts. But
which I think is why it goes back to Genesis 2 instead of somewhere afterwards.
Yes.
So, yeah,
it doesn't go to Genesis 5.
Right. Right.
Like,
yeah.
Very carefully, right?
That's
Like,
right.
This is because God did this in Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad. It's not all a result of the fall. You know, when we talk about, men's and women's roles in the church, in the home, husband, wife, of course, mutual submission, and yet there are still roles of where I think I am called to lead in a way that my wife is not in my home. So again, podcast 34 or whatever, that would be, it's too deep. We got to keep moving.
All right. So
That's good, Josh.
Those are that's the end of the audience submitted questions that were submitted via this card. Again, if you have any questions about what we are saying, what they are saying, anything that's said from the pulpit, or really just anything, go ahead and drop us one of these Connect cards. You can put it in the black box. You can give it to Ben or Josh. You can give it to Chelsea, and she'll make sure that it gets to us. You can also email us, Ben, Josh, or Jake at spartacenter.org, and we will try to get those on the podcast. Again, just to be perfectly clear, submitted by these questions are completely anonymous. If I personally ask you to make an outline, it may be less anonymous.
Yeah, that's good. Good distinction.
Yep.
Anyway, so we're going to get into Neil's questions. I am really excited about these. I'm going to try to replicate the way I hear him in my head here. So, the serpent's craftiness. Ben referred to the serpent as speaking with sarcasm. As you read with sarcasm, the text from Satan to Eve, I imagine hearing a modern-day atheist. To me, an atheist comes across as thinking that they are smarter than God and trying to convince others that there really is no God. Is that what Satan is doing? Even though Adam and Eve had a personal contact with God, is Satan trying to convince them that God really does not exist?
Wow. Thanks, Neil. Yes and no. Yes, I believe, I can't prove it hardcore, but I believe that there was sarcasm just by the words that you see, and the Hebrew I think brings that out a little bit, maybe more. You could argue that, but I like the sense of, did God really say? I almost feel like the serpent is like a professor at a very like secular anti-God university where there's this like environment that's created. It's almost like Tim Keller calls it a sneer or a slur, where there's like energy. He's trying to create an atmosphere. Like it's the words he's using, but it's the way that he's using it too. Like he's just making it sound ridiculous that God would even say that you can't eat fruit from any trees. Now, obviously, he said any, and God says only one tree is off limits. So he's automatically he's a tyrant in a course of like 30 seconds. He's gone from benevolent and wonderful and only one is off limits to everything's off limits. So it's the word Satan's using, but yes, I think I would argue that there is sarcasm. I like the modern atheist feel because it's just that vitriol that comes from anti-God sentiments. I think of not all universities, obviously, but just that anti-God sentiment on a college campus. I think, yes, of course he's trying to distort what God is saying, and so he obviously thinks he's very smart, and the author says he's very smart. He's very cunning. And he doesn't say that about man and woman, which we can get into in a minute if you want to. I don't think Satan's trying to convince them that God really doesn't exist. I don't think that's a thing at all.
Didn't you say it was more convincing them
that he's not good and not for them?
I was going to say, does he really have the authority that he says he has?
That could be part of it, yeah. But I think that's kind of implied, right? Because he knows what's going to happen when you do this. He's trying to hold you down and keep you down. If you go away from him, you might be as powerful as he is. And so it's kind of implied. But not that he doesn't exist, but that he's not good and not for them.
Yeah. I was going to say, doesn't the Bible say that even Satan knows God exists?
Well, of course. Demons believe and they shudder.
Yeah.
You know? Demons have more faith than some of us in ways. I mean, depending on how you measure that. You know? This deconstruction thing about like God doesn't exist is more of a modern, I guess modern. I mean, it's been around for a while, but
how does that feel? Demons don't necessarily need to have faith like we have faith because they just know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can't really deny the existence. Yeah. But
yeah, I would say the simple answer to the last part of that would be no, in my opinion. And the reason I would say that is. Revelation 12 gives us a description of Satan in some ways, and it says that he's the deceiver of the whole world. And so if we know anything about Satan, and we know a little about Satan getting here to this point, right? But there was a jealousy factor there that created a problem to where he wanted to be greater than God. And so he was cast out. And then we meet him again here, and we see that he's trying to deceive her. And I think what he's not trying to do is convince her that God is not real, but what he's trying to do is convince them that he's not the best thing for them, but Satan is, because he wants to be God. He wants that, and so he is going to deceive them into thinking that just come along with me, like trust me, I know what's right. Like here's what he's trying to do. Here's what's best for you, right? And we know that also Satan is here to steal, kill, and destroy, right? So ultimately, he's leading you to death. But I think that jealousy factor possibly creeps into here, and he doesn't necessarily want you to believe that God's not real, but he wants you to think that God is not actually for you as much as you think he is. In fact, I've got something that maybe you can do that's actually going to be even better for you that he doesn't want you to have, because he doesn't want you to be like him. Trust me, I know. I've been there.
Giving insider information. Yeah.
So that's where my mind goes. It's my opinion at this point. It's not written out that way, but that's what I see.
Yeah, some of this is opinion. It's conjecture. It's and some of it's not. I do not think that there's no way Satan is. And we say Satan, so I'm trying to practice what I preach. It's the serpent in Genesis 3. It's the serpent. The original hearers would have had no connection to that. There's one adversary at the base of this that's driving all of this, and his name is the Satan, or the accuser. There were adversaries from God, and there was evil, of course. But I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Like, of course, the New Testament, reading it back, it's impossible to argue with that this is Satan.
That is a question I had. And I think you might have said the answer to it in your sermon. I don't remember. So the original hearers of it didn't really have a context for Satan, but rather an adversary of God. How is that represented through the rest of the Old Testament?
It's a good question. I think that's another podcast. But I think that places like Ezekiel and Isaiah 28 or 14, and then opposite in Ezekiel, there are references to like the king of Tyre, and then people are saying, I see allusions to Satan. I'm not saying there's not any progressive knowledge on evil as it culminates, but I don't see very strong until the New Testament. I just don't. And I think some of those passages are probably stretched a little bit, but I also want to be careful because I'm not like a 10 on that scale of like, I want to fight you on that. And like, if you see Satan, I want to practice what we preach, reading Genesis in context. And then as we do go to that part where we read back, I just want us to know that that's what we're doing, So when Jesus says, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning, I think in John 8, like you want to take that and then apply that to, okay, now I want to know, was it Jesus? Was he, of course it was, because he was part of creation and he's part of the Trinity, but like, where was he, like, when that was happening, and how does that relate to, like, was it Jesus that was walking with them, and like, was it Jesus with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Like, I really, really want to know now, because there's this fourth person, and like, we make like worship songs about it, and I love it. I think it's powerful, but I'm also going, we don't know, because the Old Testament doesn't say that was Jesus. So sure, maybe pre-sin, Jesus didn't have flesh, but could God manifest just like he did over and over after sin? Like, was it an angel or was it God? I think there's also conjecture there. When you like see an angel show up and the angel is speaking for God, is it God or is it an angel? Well, it can't be fully God, right? Because it's after sin. But man, it sure seems like they're speaking. Is it God? I think there's tension there. So more questions than answers. Sorry, because they're good questions. Thanks, Neil.
Good. You got anything for that?
No, I added my piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next one, Genesis does not give an amount of time that transpired between the day man was created and when Eve ate the fruit. Ben talked about an algorithm that Satan created for Eve. How long did it take Satan to construct this algorithm, and by what means? Listening to a conversation between Adam and Eve? Watching her in private moments? Did this happen inside the garden or outside the garden? And did he wait until Eve was alone?
Thanks, Neil, for a layup of a question. Wow. Where to start? So I'm using algorithm because what I'm saying is, I'm trying to find a way to say sin doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yet, we sinned. So the algorithm is this way of saying something was in man and woman that wanted them to consider what the serpent was offering. So from man and woman's perspective, there's obviously something there. I thought when you were talking a few minutes ago, I thought, isn't it interesting? You're given the passage on when the angels fell or when Satan fell. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting that the higher order created the beings are, the more it seems like we have issues. The more it seems like I'm gonna take a run at God. I want to. Where it's like the lower order created beings. I'm not saying they're lacking in value. I'm just saying lacking in order, like animals. Mm-hmm. They don't usually take a run at God, right? Because they're not high enough created order to even like have that, the frontal lobe development and the brain development to be able to even consider it, And so if we have the ability to consider it, you do a good job most times that you preach talking about free will. I don't come alongside and then try to correct you. I try to create a full picture of, yes, there's free will, but like, man, it does not seem very free at the end of the day. I make this choice apart from God, and very quickly it turns from a free choice to I'm in bondage now. Boy, the freedom, whatever that was, I feel like I left that about 9 exits ago, where I'm just like, but you're right, it's absolutely a free choice and higher order beings. And this is Neil's fault, by the way, because this question is too loaded. How long did it take Satan? That's a good question. It doesn't seem like there was a lot of time that played out. Remember, Satan is crafty. He's crafty. And the man and woman are not crafty. So it seems like an unfair fight. And so we talked about this in our small group, which one of the people in our small group had a great question. And it was like, did they really have the skills to defeat temptation? And the answer is no and yes. Because compared to his craftiness, he was going to work them over. If it was them versus the serpent, they were going to lose. And isn't that the deep irony of this whole exercise is God made this world to inhabit it, to relate with his people, to walk with them, to be their guide, their creator and sustainer, and to be in relationship. And then in Genesis 3, yet he's nowhere to be found, which is a deep irony, because all they had to do is cry out to God and say, him, not me, him. They were weaker than the serpent. They were going to give in. If they took it upon themselves, they were going to give in, I think. But all they had to do is go, no, it's him. He's my creator. Away from me, because you're wrong, because he's my sustainer. He's my provider. He's stronger, not I'm stronger. Not like, man, that's really not a fair fight. It wasn't a fair fight. And guess what? It's not a fair fight now. Jesus dismantled the serpent, or I'm sorry, Satan in the desert. But which is interesting because Jesus was a human being, and then he didn't use like his magical powers, right? He just used God's word. So we are in a sense able to access that same word and defeat temptation. But what is the essence of the defeat? It's by God's power, by his word, by who he is, not by who I am. The essence of sin is I take it upon myself and I decide for myself, I got this. I'm going to do this apart from God. I'm going to make a decision apart from God. How long did it take Satan? I don't know. He's crafty. Probably not real long. How long did it take the social media platforms to create an algorithm for me? Once they got it going, probably not very long at all, right? Maybe listening, maybe watching in private moments, probably inside the garden. I don't see anything that suggests that there was activity outside the garden. He did not wait until Eve was alone because it says very clearly in the text that Adam was with her. And so either Adam is watching and just purposely not chiming in and letting his wife be destroyed and then siding with her against God in rebellion, or he's so aloof because he's what? Like watching butterflies? I don't know what he's right there though.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's terrifying. Like what the heck?
Yeah, I like how you said that the first sin was when she took God's place. I think is what you said. And I think what you're trying to imply is that she just took the truth of God and what he said and his word in direction of what to do and said, maybe my idea is a little bit better than yours based on the deception from Satan. And then talking about, Adam being there and that whole thing. I think it's interesting. And you've probably heard it talked about before too, like almost the first sin could be like the passivity of Adam in some way in this scenario, right? Like not protecting, not doing that type of thing, right? And
yes.
Which is why we see that it's Adam's sin that's referenced in the New Testament. It's not Eve's sin, it's Adam's sin that's referenced. Why? Because he was supposed to protect, he was supposed to take care, and he was supposed to watch over, and he didn't. And so it's just, I leaned over to Laura, said, I wonder if the first sin was actually man being passive. Like, way to go, dude.
There's tons of room for that.
Yeah. So for another podcast again.
Yep. Lots of podcasts piling up.
Yep.
I have another question that's kind of off of Neil's here. Is it a cult? I'm going to reveal my uneducatedness here.
I do that all the time being on this podcast.
We all do.
Is it a cultural thing, the idea that Satan is a cast out angel, or is that actually a thing that's in the Bible?
It's in the New Testament, clearly.
Okay.
So again, if you're reading back, you could see like, oh, that's Satan. All I'm saying is the Old Testament presents us with a serpent.
So by that logic, potentially, he didn't need to create an algorithm. He just needed to give a choice to Eve to then convince her to make the same choice that he made, which would be separation from God.
Yep. And leaving out the parts that like would make them like not choose the fruit. Like you're going to be banished from the garden and you really are going to die. And like, I don't know how much the serpent knew, but I bet the serpent knew a lot of that. I bet
it seems like the serpent would have seen everything going on and heard the conversations in some ways. Like, again, the text doesn't say that, but you can maybe think that.
Well, and I always said that's the thing about him, the idea of him being an angel, is that he would have pre-known everything, basically.
Sure.
So it's fascinating to think about.
It is.
Next, are we ready for the next question?
I think so. They're too good. So Neil, I don't know if you're going to be allowed to do this. These are too good. So,
and it's only 4 of them,
or maybe just give him one. Maybe give him one tops.
Can't give him one. He put 4 questions in one.
We'll give him Neil's corner.
One is 4, so we give him one.
Yeah.
We'll call it Neil's corner. Every podcast episode will go to Neil's corner.
Moore's corner.
I like that. Neil is more
corners.
Let's do it. Neil, you just got yourself a solidified spot in the podcast.
All right. So next question. Ben asked, where was God? Was God watching from a physical distance? It was mentioned in a previous message that God created all of us to have free will and that he wants us to choose him for a true love. Did I read that right? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Was this God's way of allowing this test to see if we would choose him or if they would choose him, an actual test of free will?
this again, loaded. Where was God? So I think the original author, so again, we're going back to what we're trying to do here. The author's original intent was to hold tension in the story as the story was being told, which was this God created order from chaos, gave the first man and woman an incredible mandate, but also chose to dwell with them in relationship. That was the goal. God has always wanted to be in a growing relationship with us. I think it's ironic because while the first man and woman are being tempted, God's not on the pages of Genesis 1 to 7 and a little bit beyond. So it's a deep irony that the narrator and the tension is presenting us with, just like how can God dwell with his people but also give man and woman a mandate? I think it was both. I don't know exactly how that was going to work. I don't think God was going to act like a helicopter parent, but he's also God, right? So I think he would have stayed close, but he also would have given space for them to relate to each other and fulfill their mandate. Again, just think of the helicoptering. I don't think that it would have looked like that. I think it would have been intimate, and I think it would have been wonderful. But that doesn't mean he would have been like right on them all the time, like right over their shoulder, hovering. I think there has to be some sort of space given in healthy relationships, But I just think it's ironic that God's nowhere to be found where his whole purpose was to dwell with his creation. And somehow the first man and woman and the serpent find a way to get over into, not Neil's corner, but into a corner. It seems like God's not there. Now, certainly he's anywhere he wants to be, but there's just tension, I think, in the story. So I would say that to that first part. Free will has to exist. It has to exist because we have to be able to make the choice to be beings that Josh always says, are not robots. We have to be able to make the choice apart from God. As long as we acknowledge that any choice apart from God does not lead to more freedom or freedom in any sense of the word that we would define, because freedom is the ability to be what we were created to be, and we were created by God, right? And so we would have to say that. But yes, there was a free will choice. I don't think it's a test at all. I don't think that's a healthy way to view it. I'm not trying to argue with you if you do. I'm not saying you're like dead wrong. I don't think it's healthy. I think it's a lot healthier to see, for instance, the tree as space that was God's. It was a mechanism by which they would actually be drawn into a deeper trust and dependence on their creator and sustainer. To stay away from it was not something that they were wired to do. To stay away from it would only be because God told them to stay away from it, because everything else was given to them and it was good. Certainly the fruit on that tree was good. So everything was really, really good. So they had to go against their hardwiring to stay in relationship with a creator. I don't think that it was a test. I think that it was meant for them to look and go, there is space that's only God's that I have to respect because God is not us. He wants to be in relationship with us, but he's not us. So every day they would have acknowledged that they would have stayed away from that tree. They would have acknowledged God as their creator and sustainer. They would have grown in relationship with him. When we say intimacy and relationship, we don't mean God was them. God's still God. He's still way above and way different than them, even though they were created specially in his image. And so, again, there's that tension there. Just because God wants a relationship doesn't make him not God. It doesn't make him less. He's just maybe he's just like Adam and Eve. No, he's not just like Adam and Eve, And so there has to be a way. It didn't have to be a tree. Of course, it could be whatever God wants it to be, but there has to be a way that he invites us into deeper, healthy relationship with boundaries. I don't know what that would have looked like if it wasn't a tree. It could have been anything, Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think where is God is a good question. I think the physical distance piece is an easy way to look into this, because later, I don't want to spoil anything, but we see it talks about God walking through the garden and those kinds of things. So there is this physical idea, but I would also say that God was right there with them when this was all happening.
Sure.
Because, even in the creation narrative, when it talks about speaking the breath of life into his creation, it seems to be that there's this connection there already where there's maybe this initial indwelling of the Holy Spirit within this creation, possibly. Again, maybe the original readers wouldn't necessarily interpret that way.
Certainly wouldn't have done that.
But what we can do is we can, like we've been talking about, look back and see maybe that's what was happening here. But either way, even if that's not true, God's omnipresence is still just as it was back then as it is now, meaning he's in all places at all times, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And so he was there with them, but the idea is that they're now starting to form and change their idea of what their direction is going to be and what choices they might make. And so it's not looking at God and keeping your eyes focused on him. Now I'm veering and looking over at what this other option might be and what this other thing is. And so God is there, but he's not necessarily like maybe physically standing there like he would in the garden and other scenarios. But he's obviously there.
Which is such an interesting thing because of human minds, we always depict God standing in the garden, or like there's in the videos, there's a couple of pictures of God resting, and he's just kind of sitting there overlooking the garden, and it's like, is that really what we want to portray? Is that really what it was?
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I think there's tension there that the original author wants the hearers to hear and feel. And I think that's the power of God's word is God's word. It speaks, it lives, it breathes, it is what it is. But I'm just saying, like, when I think about like a narrator's perspective, like if it was Moses, the original author of like he's crafting something in the Israelite context for these hearers that are Jewish, that are saturated in ancient Near Eastern gods and goddesses, tons of different origin stories that contradict the one true God. He's taking them back to the beginning. That happened when? Who knows, right? But that's the whole point. Is it wasn't the text and the event are in different happen in different times and dates. But
yeah, and then just because I thought about something as you were talking about it, the way that this is framed here, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, uneducated, don't think that God tests us like this. Because this would seem like it's set up to be like, I gave you this test to see if you would, and you wouldn't, just like I knew you wouldn't. Ha 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 ha. No, I don't think.
Definitely not that. I'm not taking away, like, so if you look at the New Testament, I got to think about the Old, but when you look at the New, tempt and test is the same root word in Greek. Jesus was dragged into the desert to be tempted, tested. Is Jesus able to be tempted? New Testament sure seems to think so. What does that mean? That's a really good question. That's a very, very deep dive. He never sinned, so he ran the gamut on temptation, whereas like I probably given in with between 5 and 10 minutes in certain moments of weakness. But that's another deep dive. Would God test me today? I think so. I agree with you how you just said it. I mean, this is a loving God who breathed life, who wants to dwell in relationship. Josh is right. I don't know about the indwelling of the Holy Spirit context, but I know that God has always been in relationship. So even despite our sin, read the whole Testament. He's always making plans to be in his people's midst, and he's always, even when his people are rejecting him and his presence temporarily leaves, like the tabernacle or the temple, he's always making plans to come back, and he's always accessible by the few people who want to access him, like Daniel and his friends. He's right there in the midst of Babylon, a pagan place. The temple is so far away. The land is gone. They're in captive. They're being taken captive. Whole different nation, whole different anti-God culture, and yet God is doing some of his most incredible work through four guys. It just seems like the odds are so stacked against him, and there's no way God could possibly know. God is always accessible. He's always close. Acts 17, he's never very far away, right? This is post-sin, right? See Jesus at the cross. God came to Emmanuel, God with us. We didn't get to him. We didn't want to get to him. We didn't have a way to get to him. He came to be with us. Relational. So it's not a test. In that context, it is. I don't like that at all. It's not a test. We weren't supposed to fail. We had everything that we needed because we had him, and we were created in a perfect garden, and we were giving everything that we needed. There's no good reason for sin. It doesn't make any sense. That's the tension. It doesn't make sense. And not only did they sin, not only did the woman sin, Adam sinned and thought it would be a good idea, and then we've been reproducing it and reenacting it ever since. So like this idea of like, would we have sinned? I don't know. I think maybe I would have been a little bit sharper than them. I reproduce it now. What confidence do I have that if I go back there that I would have made a different choice?
I do what they did every day.
I have more information. It's so stupid. It makes no sense, and yet that's the point. I have a sin nature that doesn't make any sense.
I do. That does bring up another question in my head. So then what is the difference between test and trial? Is there one?
I think, again, the language is close in Greek. Tempt, test, trial to me is something that that is not necessarily orchestrated by the hand of God, not directly necessarily, but I'm going through it. It's my life situation or circumstances. It could be, of course it could be, directly from God, but I think it's something that I'm going through, and so it's not that God. What is it? Does it say God doesn't? It says in James, God does not tempt anyone, correct?
Right.
So in some sense, he's definitely not dangling out a sin carrot, but test to prove the worth of your faith because he loves you like a father loves a son. I think parents, I'm not one, but don't you guys set up benchmarks for your kids, Josh? I mean, isn't there
We do.
in a loving context?
But when you say prove the worth of your faith, that seems like something that would be for me more than it would be for God.
100%.
Okay.
It's always for you. Yeah, he doesn't need. This is him in distinction from ancient Near Eastern gods and goddesses. He's not needy at all. He's not threatened by us. He's jealous in relationship, but that's because he loves us, and I don't understand that either. I don't, because if I'm him, no offense to any of you, or myself, I don't think I'd personally bother. I don't.
Would you say it's kind of reckless?
Wow.
Oh,
That's
boy.
another podcast.
That is.
I don't know if
we have so many podcasts.
I don't know why he loves us. He just does, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it.
All right. You got anything?
Please, you opened up the.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this question too is to remember that no, God is not doing something to test us to see what we're going to do because he already knows that,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew that from the very beginning.
Mhm.
And so it's not a test for him, it's a test for us,
Of course.
if it is a test. To your point, James does say, count it all joy, brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, and it almost seems to imply here that as it goes down and talks about producing steadfastness, being made perfect and complete, that there's trials in life, but then there's also things that maybe come in your way, either orchestrated by God or through just the normal sinful life that we live through, that either way it's being used to create a better person on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it is a test or trial, I would agree with your statement that trial seems to be more something that comes from living in this broken world that we have, and maybe a test is a little bit more intentional, that maybe could come from the world we live in, but maybe is a little bit more orchestrated to say, I need you to be over here, and you're going to have to go through this in order to get here where I want you to be. So
Does it say, is it James 1 that says God's not tempted, or God doesn't tempt anyone?
It says right here, let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one, but each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desires.
So, Jake, to your point, the heart of a relational God that we have is not to see if we'll fail.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing to think about, just thinking about, it's going to sound weird, thinking about being God, looking at all of us and knowing the outcome of decisions and still letting it happen.
Yes. So I'll go another step further, because why not? We're podcasting, right? This is what we do. So why, if he didn't want us to fail, why even allow the serpent in the garden? Because certainly he didn't have to allow the serpent in the garden, correct? Because he's God. He can do whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. So again, speculation. It really seems to me like we were going to sin at the first chance we got. And that makes no sense, but it really seems like we're not going to need the temptation from the serpent, because my point was the serpent is drawing on something that, like, he was saying something that they wanted to hear.
You're saying you think we would have sinned even without the serpent?
I think you have to say that, because otherwise it's Satan's fault. It's a serpent's fault and the devil made me do it, versus like you're culpable.
Okay, I can see that.
Okay.
I can see that. I guess I would wrestle with like if Satan isn't there, what is there in order to spark your decision to not?
We'll never know.
Learn.
Maybe that tree on its own became just enticing enough to where they got closer and closer.
It would just be that.
Maybe.
It just seems like it doesn't take much, and I know it's from a crafty serpent, but I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
It's possible. So more conjecture. This is where it's not as much conjecture. This is more like true, but this is more we don't know why the serpent was allowed in the garden, but we do know that God is regularly taking evil in its essence, its worst intentions, whether it's the serpent, Satan being embodied by Satan himself, or whether it's Joseph's brothers who are intending harm to him, evil intentions. God is regularly taking the worst of our intentions, and he's bringing good out of it. I think, more speculation, I think Satan was probably doing his happy dance when Jesus was brought to the cross. And look what was happening, even though nobody could see it. You know? And so, again, that doesn't clean everything up, but it is who our God is in the midst of rebellion. Again, higher-ordered creatures. Isn't that interesting how the two, looking back from the New Testament, the two highest-order creatures, I would say, angels and mankind, right? In one order or the other, either men and angels or angels and men.
Yep.
And here they are kind of coming together in the garden in the first pages of Scripture, and they're kind of like conspiring. These higher, it's not the animals, it's not cows that are doing it. It's the highest ordered creatures that are just, it's backfiring. And obviously a way that God was aware of that was going to happen. Higher order creatures, man, they're trouble because they're, you know, you have a 3-year-old and you're going to get the toddler rebellion, but you're not going to get the, I stole the car and I'm doing drugs and I'm, you know, like your life is in danger and you are making dangerous choices behind the wheel, drinking alcohol and like stuff that's like going to keep your parents up at night. And like, it's like terror potentially, you know, but they grow up. It's not, the 3-year-old rebellion becomes, now you got me terrified. You're a higher order thinking being. You actually have the ability to get behind the wheel. You actually have the ability to masquerade it as an adult without really understanding the consequences because your brain hasn't fully developed yet. That's terrifying. I'm not even a father. That's I can't, like, the higher order created beings, man. Woof. We're something. We're pieces of work, aren't we?
We are.
Loved pieces of work, right?
Yes. Very much so.
We're all going to get to heaven and find out that there's some other like level of consciousness for animals and that they are rebelling against God in some capacity. We're like,
or they just don't rebel,
They
even
knew it
though
all
they
along.
could.
that would be
They
somewhat
knew it all
affli-
along.
that
They're
would-
going to be like,
that-
you.
That's why we kill deer and turkeys
Ooh.
and pheasants and eat them.
We are in less than 25 days away from opening day of gun
Because
season.
they are delicious. That's not on a Wednesday,
November
right?
14th.
Yeah.
That's not on.
No, 15th.
That's not on a Tuesday.
I'm not going
right?
to see you for a while, am I?
Well, I'm going up the 14th, and we'll be back Monday night,
Oh, okay.
hopefully with a
Is
whole
that
bunch of,
Is that a Friday?
bunch of
the
deer.
14th then?
yeah,
Okay.
go Friday,
Is it
opening day
always on a
Saturday.
Friday?
Nope, just follows the date. Not. I wish it always opened on a Friday.
That would
That'd
be
be
nice.
nice. So I'd petition for that. But
All right. So last question here.
I can hear Neil speaking.
Oh,
in
the shame of it all. How do we, as that one house, deal with not only our shame when we fail, but also how do we accept others' shame? We do tend to be judgmental about others' sins.
How do we? This is how do we accept others in their shame?
Oh. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
You want to start with this, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. How do you not only deal with your shame when we fail? That's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody this morning about this and about shame and its role in our lives and things. And, you know, it's easy just to go, well, if you just read Romans 8, there's no condemnation, all this kind of stuff, whatever. It's all nice and good. But there's a reality of like shame can kick in your life when you make decisions and things like that. And I think for me, and push back or affirm this if you think it to be true, but I think shame in and of itself is a legitimate feeling, but I would qualify it as an indicator, not an identifier.
That's excellent.
And so I think just like we use the word fear or shame or anxiety, these are all indicators of something, but we can never let them come into be our identity. And so take the shame that you have and realize that, oh, something is off. Something is where it shouldn't be. There's something wrong. Figure out what that is, but then take that to Christ. Don't let that be the identity of who you are and live in shame. And so in your own self, I would say do that. And then when you, in relation to other people's shame, I guess there's two things here. He said, accept others in their shame, we do tend to be judgmental about others' sin. I'm trying to reconcile both of those. I don't. Maybe he's just saying, one, how do we help other people when they have shame? Maybe that's the question. I think that maybe speaks to that piece of it. Yes, we are judgmental of other people's sin in a lot of ways. There's a healthy way of not being judgmental, but calling out sin. But then there's also a place of understanding that you are also a sinner, and so walk into that context, understanding you are also a sinner saved by grace, and so
Yes.
You need to come into that with that context, and then talk about the Matthew context of making sure that the plank spec that you talk about all the time as you enter that situation of other people's sin. So before you get to this point of judgment, which there is righteous judgment from sinner to sinner and believer to believer, not outside, right? Non-Christians, we're not going to do any judging. Inside, yes, there is some place for it.
Yeah.
Make sure you're doing it within the right context.
That's good. I love indicator identifier. I should have talked to you before my message. Yes, I think that's very well said. I would say as that one house, we both normalize that because we are sinners, we are prone to shame, and so it's there. I agree with you that's why I try to make my definition something that is perpetual. So it's like I'm hiding because I feel shame versus like I just feel shame and then I run to Jesus. I think you could argue that the shame is meant to, you have to nuance this, but like the shame is meant to make you run instead of hide, run to instead of from, right? But that's the hard part is the shame, as I understand it, doesn't make them want to run to, it makes them want to run from.
Yeah.
And then when they run from, they're perpetuating shame.
Yes.
They're taking what they feel, and it's a very, very negative thing. Oh, by the way, we all have it. We all deal with it. And so we normalize it at that one house. But as we're normalizing it, we're inviting, because the God of the universe sees you completely and loves you and wants something so much more. And you do have to come out of hiding. You have to come out of hiding. And so we are here to, as we represent Christ, to say, we invite you out of hiding. And it's going to be met with grace and love, and you come out of hiding. That shame is going to melt away, and it's going to be replaced by Jesus's righteousness, and you're going to feel the rays of Jesus's light on your body, and it's going to feel so warm and wonderful. And I wish I could tell you we just stay in that place magically once we experience it once. And we're creatures of habit, right? And we have the sin nature, and even if we have the Spirit, we veer right back to those dark spaces, or at least justify having hidden spaces in our lives. And we almost pretend like, well, God can't see that. Or, yeah, he probably can see that, but he's got a lot on his plate. And or I don't care if he can see it and he has a lot on his plate or not. I deserve it, and all of these things that kind of beget or perpetuate what I'm calling shame. It's not only shame, but it's just this sense of, I have to hide. I am going to be exposed and rejected. And in Christ, he wants to expose us so that we can be healed, so that we can be saved, not rejected. He doesn't want to reject anyone. He wants and it really seems like we have to come out of hiding in order, though, to really be saved, to really experience the saving nature of our God in Christ Jesus, And so I like that, though, because initially that's not like that's all bad, because secular psychology makes it sound like it's 100% bad.
Right.
I don't think it's 100% bad. Right. I like to differentiate guilt and shame, because guilt is like, I've done something wrong, and I feel 2 Corinthians 7, a genuine conviction that I want to make it right, and it lends toward. But shame could work that way too. I think there are aspects of initial shame where it's like, nope, I can't hide, though. I have to lean into this relationship. I have to own my part, to try to make it right. So
yeah, it's like the indicator light on your car, man. It's just like it starts blinking, and if you don't ever do anything about that, it's going to lead to problems, right?
Yep. Talking about cars again.
Talking about cars. Yeah.
We could go longer. I'll just say one more thing. With that one house, as a church, we pride ourselves in inviting you in, giving you space to be able to, you have room to feel all of these things. You don't have to come out of hiding the first or second Sunday that you're here. Obviously, you're starting to come out of hiding because you're at our church, and we love that. You have space to figure out who this Jesus is, to hear the messages, to allow the worship to impact you, the Holy Spirit to speak to you, and then when you're ready, then you can come out of hiding, and hopefully we've created space for you to do that and opportunities for you to do that. I will say, though, that I don't want to sound too cultural and go, whenever you're ready, because time is short. And it is not my calling to just say, whenever you're ready. It's my job to create space, reflect the love of Christ, to be loving and patient, and to normalize all of this stuff, and to invite. But we do have to press in on that a little bit. We can't, it's not loving to just go, but if you don't, it's fine. If you don't, we still want you here and we love you. But if you don't, there are potential major damage and consequences coming.
Yeah.
We have to say that, right? We have to reflect that.
I also think it would be hard to be here and sit stagnant like that.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Try to strike that right balance, right?
Yep.
Anyway, we all good?
Yep.
So, and
Lots of good questions.
yeah, that was the last question. So basically all I want to say is I think that it makes that one house very attractive.
Me too.
I brought it back.
Nice job.
Me too.
Anyway, that is it for this week's breakdown of
Thanks, Jared.
Ben's message, The Serpent. Thank you to Jared for being here. It actually allowed me to be a part of the conversation instead of in this and that's it. If you want to submit questions, again, for the third time, we have this wonderful Connect card in the back of the pews. There's all sorts of stuff on the back here for you to fill out. It is completely anonymous if you submit questions via this method. If you would like to talk about creating the outline for this episode, you can come see me. We can engage in that conversation.
Jake will out
Hey,
you.
Jake, can I create the outline for the
No.
Oh, fine. No,
Preaching
no.
team is not allowed.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. Has to be.
Neil's maxed out at 1 now because 1 is 4. So, but they're really good. So that's, yeah. Sorry, Neil.
Yeah.
There's smoke coming out my ears right now.
Anyway, you can.
It's a great job.
We'll be back next Friday with another breakdown of this. We have a couple of special things coming up. This Advent, we're doing a very special Advent-specific podcast. I think we're getting near the end of Genesis Part 1, correct?
I believe so.
This was week 6.
Well, we are doing, so it's a little confusing on paper. So November 2nd and 9th is our global and local focus. 9th is the Horizon Awards. So that's going to be our focus in this service. So we're taking a break, but part 1 ends November 23rd.
Oh, the Horizon Awards. I have a pretty big part in that, don't I?
Yep. So
actually, you do too.
we're pausing right before Advent, and then after Advent we're getting back into part 2, December 28th, and then we're going until the annual meeting, pausing there, and then we're finishing with part 3, starting the Sunday after the annual meeting, and going until we leave. We're going to leave a little bit of space to lead into Easter. So,
all right.
Yeah,
well, you heard it here first. That is what we're doing, and that's what we're doing. Other than that, you can check us out on all major social media networks. We're always posting stuff around there. All major podcasting platforms. Ben just is going to break my table.
wow, whole table. Huh?
And other than that, see you Sunday. Have a great weekend.